One of the biggest offseason topics has not been Brock Purdy's contract or George Kittle's contract or the mass exodus. Obviously, yes, those are big topics in the 49ers community. But I really think one of the biggest topics is about Jake Moody. Honestly, if you go onto any social media platform, it's crazy. Somehow, some way, it doesn't matter what the post is, but you have fans talking about Jake Moody. Is he still on this team? Why hasn't Jake Moody been released yet? So it's been a pretty interesting situation to kind of watch from afar because as we know, Jake Moody struggled. And Jake Moody has kind of had a roller coaster of a ride since he was drafted in the third round out of Michigan. But now the San Francisco 49ers have a new special teams coordinator in Brant Boyer, and they have made some changes already to that room. When you look at the 49ers releasing Tabor Pepper, their long snapper, you actually have Brant kind of talk about this and how the move of getting John Weeks, the guy who has, dude, he spent in like 15 years on the Texans as a long snapper, absolutely insane. Crazy longevity, who is now the 49ers long snapper. He actually discusses how he believes Weeks can help Jake Moody, and he also provides a bit of an update on kind of what the expectation is for Jake Moody and if he will be the 49ers kicker moving forward. Take a listen to what he had to say. This was from Matt Lively. Take a listen right here.
Um, there isn't a special teams coach in this league that didn't have him rated number one coming out that I know of. He's as talented as kid as it gets. I think that, the injury issue where he was fighting injuries, going back and forth, I think that had a lot to do with it. I think that, you know, us bringing in Weeks is going to help. I think that, the kid gets his mind right, which I think he's doing. He's doing a hell of a job for us so far. I think he'll do a heck of a job for us. I really do.
Do you expect him to be your kicker?
Well, yeah. I mean, it all comes down to what happens, in the preseason and everything, just like in any other position for sure.
So I think my biggest takeaway from this is that Jake Moody isn't going anywhere, at least for now. Again, you have to remember the 49ers sunk a third round draft pick into him. That is a very large investment for a specialist. Yes, the 49ers have proven in the past they are willing to do that. They are not afraid to spend a fourth round pick on a punter in Mitch Wishnowsky, who I'm curious to see what his future holds because he's been dealing with a chronic back issue. I don't know if he will be the punter moving forward for this team. I think Brant Boyer is going to have a lot to say about that. But when you listen to what he had to say, it's clear that they still are planning on, bringing in some kicker depth. I know they have a rookie kicker coming in during rookie minicamp. So we'll see if he actually gets signed to the 90-man roster, but as it stands right now, it still is just Jake Moody as the only signed uh, place kicker for the team. But as you could hear from what Brant Boyer had to say, the expectation for now is that Jake Moody is still going to be the kicker, but he did allude to the fact there will be a competition, and that competition will be figured out in preseason, throughout training camp. So I don't believe that we know just yet who Jake Moody will be in competition with, but I do think it is to be expected that that person could be coming soon. Obviously, right now, the only thing that we have is that rookie that we talked about at a um, Louisiana Lafayette, I believe he is. He's actually a pretty solid kicker from everything that I've seen. But I think most fans were wanting a veteran kicker to come in and compete, a guy who's done it at a high level for a long time. Again, I think part of the fans' frustrations with Jake Moody is kind of the lack of confidence that he has. And, for being a young player on a loaded team. And I think, that's kind of what Brant talked about. He talked about having to get Jake Moody's mind right. And he believes the long snapper, John Weeks, can actually help in that regard because he has been doing this for so long that he could definitely be a guy that helps Jake Moody. And, you find that kind of fascinating, right? Because they did have Tabor Pepper here, who has been a long snapper in the league for a long time. And with the San Francisco 49ers as well for a couple years. And they felt it was time to move on from him and bring in someone else. And from all accounts, John Weeks is a pillar in the community for the Texans. I know actually a couple people who work for the Texans now who used to work for the San Francisco 49ers. And when we signed John Weeks, they reached out immediately and said, you're going to love this guy. Which is rare for a long snapper, let's be honest. So he is held, I think, in probably one of the highest regards of any specialist in the league. And, again, people who are with the 49ers, only with the Texans for maybe a year or two, are telling me, like, this guy's legit. Like, he's for real. Like, he's a real guy. Like, and he is going to be a great addition to your team. And, you think, well, how great can a long snapper really be? But again, leaders come in all different ways, shapes, and forms. And, sometimes it's guys you least expect. And in this case, the 49ers got one in a long snapper, and clearly Brant Boyer, who's been around and is also regarded as one of the better special teams coordinators in the league, will now have this opportunity to kind of remold and I think craft this room. So I still think there might be some changes coming for the punter position. I'm very curious of how that is ultimately all going to play out. I'm glad the 49ers didn't draft a punter, but I do anticipate that we could either see some additional punters signed, probably not until training camp time. But again, I think back to last training camp, there was a stretch of probably 5 to 6 practices where after every single practice there was a punter trying out. They had a Presley punted all preseason, right? And then they ended the season with a different punter. I believe it was McDonald. Should probably know his name. But hey, the 49ers might be bringing a different punter. They might be bringing in a veteran kicker, maybe, and a rookie kicker to compete with Jake Moody. But it does sound like the plan is to build confidence around Jake Moody. And again, also mentioning the fact that he did have the high ankle sprain and that he maybe was playing through injury and just was never really right once he returned, because he was pretty good. I think he only missed one kick prior to going down with the high ankle sprain. And then after that, it was just kind of downhill from there. And he really struggled on the back half of the season. And again, it felt more mental than anything. And hey, as being a former player myself, again, never at that level, but I do understand and can rationalize how injuries have more of an effect than just physical. There is a huge mental component to injuries, and how it affects your performance. And so there might be some validity to that. So we'll have to see. I definitely reached a point, I think, at the end of last season where I was like, there's no way you can bring Jake Moody back. From my perspective, I knew from the 49ers perspective, there was probably a pretty solid chance he would return because, again, he was a third-round draft pick. So I think they would want to see that through before just cutting bait. And so I think that's why they're going the route that they're going. They are at least making it known there is a competition. They're making it known that they're trying to rebuild his confidence. They're bringing in a long snapper to help with that, who is known for being a strong leader. And you got a new coach, so you got new a lot of new for Jake Moody, but maybe new isn't a bad thing. Maybe some new guidance, some new voices can help reinstill and rebuild that confidence. And when you listen to Brant, I mean, he seems he's not. I don't know what a special teams coach looks like, but he seems pretty fiery. And I kind of like it. Take a listen to this clip too, right here, to kind of give you a little bit more insight to how fiery he is.
You know, at the end of the day, this is a violent game played by men, and it's a special teams is a one-on-one matchup 90% of the time, and it's either you or him. And what it comes down to, and that's my whole mindset that I'm trying to get these guys to understand is it's either you or me, and it's going to be you. Period. And that's the whole mindset that I want these guys to understand.
So again, I think that we have a good situation brewing here with the new coaching staff. You know, they're bringing back Robert Saleh. You got Brant Boyer into the mix. He seems like a fiery guy that you definitely want to play for. And I like his mentality. I like what he had to say. So maybe he is the guy that can help turn Jake Moody around. We'll see. But that is definitely going to be one of the bigger storylines of all of training camp. So we'll see how it goes down. Let me know what you think of this whole Jake Moody situation in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.